Hey there, golf lovers. Looking to step up your game? Let me tell you about Mollybox, the ultimate golf subscription box. Every month, Mollybox sends you a box packed with premium golf gear, accessories, and stylish apparel, all delivered right to your door. Imagine getting top-tier apparel and more, all handpicked just for you. With Mollybox, you'll stay ahead of the game and boost your performance. It's like having a personal caddy in a box. So why wait? Join the Mollybox family today. Head over to mollybox.com and use your limited time promo code ROGUE25, ROGUE, ROGUE 25 for 25% off your first box. That's mollybox.com.
Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on the Payoff, my main man, Jason Lachance. He heads up the Knockin, Doorz Down podcast, which has had amazing guests. We actually talk about that at the top of our conversation. Jason is an amazing guest for us. He was in the radio industry, still is, for about 20, 30 years. I'm not going to say he's that old. For about 20 years out in California. He's been sober for about 5. His story of hope and really the spiritual journey he takes us on. We talk about the wreckage, right? And then we talk about the recovery, but we talk about the journey in spirituality. And it's an amazing conversation with an amazing dude. I'm very fortunate and thankful that I get to connect with guys like this through doing stuff like this. So we'll keep it rolling here. We always keep it rolling with my main man, Kevin Souza. Let's start off. You've got a really interesting story, a really colorful career. The Knockin' Down Doors podcast has had a lot of success. And I think the message, obviously, you got a t-shirt on that says hope, and you carry that, right? And the podcast carries hope, but you also have the tools and the skill set to really make it go. And you draw big-time guests. We were just talking about it offline, guys like Charlie Sheen, Ric Flair, Kurt Angle, just big time. Steve O I saw. And that's really cool that those people come into your orbit and you go into theirs. And before I get into your broadcasting career, let's start with your alcohol consumption career, your drug career. You grew up in Wisconsin, is that right?
No, California.
In California. Okay. So Central California.
Yep.
Okay. Like the Fresno area?
No, I was born in the city that's known for lettuce, Salinas, California, right near Monterey.
Okay.
So, I grew up in a little town called Aromas, and other than strawberry fields and a quarry, there wasn't much else around. I mean, it was dirt clods and sand piles. As a kid, that was pretty much it.
What was your family situation like? How was home? Was there addiction in your family?
Dad suffered chemical addiction as well as sex addiction. And he had a lineage of sex addiction that as far back as we can trace from his father to his grandfather on his paternal side. My mom, her family addiction was there. My grandfather, I have an aunt and uncle that aren't here directly connected to addiction, and 2 others that struggled. And then I had an awesome older brother that essentially was like my dad that taught me everything, which, when it comes to the birds and the bees, wasn't always the best when they're just 4 years older than you. But yeah, I mean, I remember periods of stability and then some big instability, especially as I was going through puberty, high school, getting out there in the world was when my dad, that peak was very evident that it was going on. And so there was a lot of tumultuous times there.
Do you remember how that affected you as a kid, as far as like your self-esteem and your ability to kind of move about like outside of the house? Or was it something that you just totally stuffed and didn't really notice it kind of messing with you till later on?
I didn't notice it till later on, as I was really a late bloomer with substance use. Although I will say the pornography being in the house, I'll often say first drug really was the first thing that I used to change my emotional state.
Yeah.
And that was very, very young. I would say 6, 7 years old when about that was. But no, I was kind of a late bloomer. I mean, I shy to a certain extent. I mean, I felt shy. It's funny. I remember going to my high school reunion and talking with people. Oh, I'm so shy. And they're like, what are you talking about? You were far from shy. Yeah. So I think I hit it pretty well. And people that were close to me, you know, my 2 best friends, even their parents had relayed, like, you know, we were worried about you. I'd go there often and just sleep. So I had some safe havens, and there was stuff really going on there before I understood myself that it was going on, or anyone conveyed it to me.
I got to back up a little bit, and, you know, I'm not looking for any details, and I'm sure you're not looking to share any crazy details, but like, how do you become exposed to pornography at 6 years old?
My dad actually, you know, and he doesn't remember it, which I get. He was probably using at the time. Literally was like, I don't know how graphic I can be, but
yeah, you can be as graphic as you're comfortable with being.
Yeah. Hey, son, come over here and look at the tits on this one.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so it was there, and I will say that looking for a female to complete me, make me feel whole was definitely a huge downfall, because it probably started then. I remember being like 19, Pete, and dating this gal, she's a gorgeous lady, and comes over, and my dad goes, gee, son, you always get the hottest ones. And that was the first time I felt validation. Damn. And so I was like, subconsciously. I wasn't able to break this down till much later. So it played a huge role.
You nailed it. That was another thing, like outsides defining who I was. Like, if I could find an attractive woman, then that meant that I must have been okay. Even though I'm still like terribly torn up and insecure on the inside. A lot of my drinking was so I could build myself up, drinking and using, to feel like I was on the same level as these women I was dating, because I would build them up to be on this, you know, pedestal because of how you know they looked, or I thought they looked. What about your first drink? Back to you. It's your day, pal. I could talk forever about me. I got a therapist for that, and you can look for me on the Knockin' Down Doorz pod. But
that resonates with me, though, Pete. Yeah. I mean, before I jump to the first drink, I mean, it really does. Putting that other individual on a pedestal, almost like making them a godlike creature in a way, you know? Yeah. And literally handing my emotional state over to them too. So, but drink, ironically, I mean, I had like sips of champagne at weddings and stuff like that, but it didn't really start taking off until I was about 22, 23. I ended up bouncing around to different colleges, trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life.
Where'd you go? What colleges? Like
ASU first.
Okay.
I had some crazy dreams that I
Great journalism program.
No, I was going for architecture, ironically. I won some awards in high school for drafting, and I thought that's what I was going to go into. And I wanted to play basketball, but there's a guy there at the time in 1996 who kind of went on to win some NBA championships named Eddie House that played the same position that I did.
Oh, Eddie House got buckets.
Yeah. And we played in high school, and he kind of remembered me. We became buddies there for a little bit, but
Eddie House was on, I worked in PR for the Charlotte Bobcats before they went back to being the Hornets, and Eddie was on the first expansion group of that team. And he was the kind of guy, he had a couple games where he could just unload for 30 points. And he was a key contributor to some of those Miami Heat teams, right? That were real good. He carved out a real nice career for himself. So you've got a good excuse.
Yeah. There was essentially, I think I did a practice for like, all right, you want to try to be a walk-on? And I just remembered having a conversation, him and another guy, like, yeah, this ain't going to work out for me. I'm like 6'3", $145, 50 soaking wet, So I bounced around, went from there, then ended up doing JC and work construction, that story. And, that really struggled with my depression a lot at that time, not, having a lot of discourse still with my dad, and then ended up in San Francisco and just did not resonate with anyone and except some of the teachers. And he goes, hey, there's a film school in Monterey. I was going for film major. And so I ended up there. And it wasn't but about a month and a half I was there, being out with friends that had bands and stuff. And I'm telling some jokes, and this guy, really cool looking kind of ska punk guy, goes, you're funny. You want to work in radio? I said, you want to buy me a Jack and Coke? And that's literally how I got into radio. Still one of my best friends to this day. And it kind of took off there. I noticed the more I was out, the insecurities, and then people, oh, I heard you on the radio, especially if it was a girl. And I was like, oh, I better get something in me. And it wasn't quick off to the races, but I do reflect and go, I was a binger from the start.
Yeah. So you talked about the depression. Was there any way you were coping with that, or were you? Because like I don't even honestly, dude. I had such arrested development, and I was just a kid. But like with the age you're talking about, like when I had like depression, or and I would have bouts. I never like had like. I had all kinds of other stuff, but like I would get down and stuff, but I had no way of coping with that. I didn't know like that I could talk to anybody about it. If I felt bad about something, I would just like ride it out. This before drinking really became a solution, right? Was there any way you were coping with it?
Nothing healthy.
Yeah.
Definitely, kind of bouncing from girl to girl. And then when I wasn't in a relationship, it was even worse. And, I was addicted to the relationship side, when it comes to sex and love addiction, although sex kind of had to be a big part of it too, for that validation. So it was a lot of that.
Were you addicted to girls before you were addicted to alcohol or drugs?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. 100%. Still probably the thing I have to check the most in life now. Like, I'm in a good relationship, but am I being good to my partner right now? Am I leaning on her for something that is not okay? And really communication is just huge with that. Yeah. And on my feelings, but girls first and foremost. Absolutely.
So when you're working in radio, and you mentioned it, right? Like it is a social job. You're working in the studio when you're on the air most times, but then sometimes you do remotes. Sometimes you're promoting things, and you're out at night. Did the drinking start to ramp up there?
Yeah, just kind of the whole party lifestyle. I mean, it was, this was 2000. And so it was like really supported. I mean, one of my first, GMs, it was like, oh, you're here. Well, yeah, my shift starts in like 2 hours. Perfect. We're going to whatever place. And you get liquored up on a Friday. It was like, it was encouraged, and then get on air. And
was it rock radio?
It was alternative rock at the time, but there was kind of a blend. There was rock radio was rock radios, just post grunge and everything else. So all of it sounded the same. But yeah, it was, I mean, we had a hip hop station in the building, all this. So, it was partying in all these different atmospheres, and being a chameleon as I was, it was like supported. And then you would go to a concert, meet the rock stars, and then afterwards, and they'd be like, oh, you want a drink? It just was a part of it. It seemed normal. Every relationship I was in, it was, oh, hey, we're going to go out and have a drink. Come on. Okay. It was the lifestyle of it all.
What was one of those moments for you when you're either at a show or you're hanging out with the band afterwards, where you sort of like, you do a double take, like, I can't believe I'm in this situation, whether it's.
There are a few, I would say, and Canadians are just fun, Pete. I don't know how many Canadian people you've come across, but So I go to a Nickelback concert. Yes, I'm a Nickelback fan, people. I'm one of those people that will admit it. And
well, they had a lot of hit songs for somebody. Why not you? Why not me? Right?
Every concert I've been to, there's always sold out. So somebody must like it. They were playing like one of the sheds in Sacramento, outdoor venues, and the record company made a mistake, so I had to buy my own ticket. And then the record rep introduces me and like, "Hey, this is Jason, one of the station guys playing the tunes," and he had to buy his own ticket. And the Chad Kroger, his brother, who's the bass player, he's like, "Dude, you bought your own ticket?" "Yeah, I'm a fan. I really wanted to see you guys." Like, "What are you doing after the show?" "Oh, I don't know. I came by myself." He's like, "What? And you're here by yourself?" "Yeah, I'm a big fan. I wanted to see you guys again." And so he's like, "Where are you sitting?" "Oh, I got a lawn seat. That was all that was left." "Bullshit. Here's a lanyard." So I was down right up front, and then afterwards, and then, it was Canadian dudes like, "Hey, you tried this beer?" "No." And the next thing I can remember, besides having a lot of laughs because they were hilarious and wonderful people, was being woken up in the parking lot at like 6 a.m.
So there you have it. You have the gamut, dude, because when you're telling the story, it's a fun story. You're laughing. It's a good time. But then you're being woken up by, if you're like me at all, somebody's picking up trash in the parking lot or, something like that, security. Well, when did it start to spill over into your job, into your personal relationships, when you thought, all right, this is much? Because you're working in rock and roll, essentially. So you've got a little bit longer leash than the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When did you notice that it started to take its toll?
It was sadly with the relationship with my kid's mom. It's just tumultuous, just two people that
Did you guys get married?
We did eventually. Okay. Yeah. After the kids were born, and it's like a firework. Sure, it's beautiful, but something had to explode to make it. And that's the way I would just put it. It was always intense. Which is what in reflection made me want to do some of that work in sex and love addiction and really take a look at that and relationships there. But yeah, it's just tumultuous. And that's really, really where it took off. I ended up here where I'm at now in the Central Valley, about an hour north of Fresno. Radio was still a big deal then. Yeah. We were in a small town. When me and my co-host went out, we never had to buy a drink. Girls were coming up to us. So it was like, all of a sudden we became stuck having to do that lifestyle, like be those guys everywhere. And someone that didn't know, his ass from a wristwatch, it's who I became. Yeah. Like I didn't know anything else, and people were like, "Oh, I'm not going to drink tonight." Like, "What, you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm just kidding."
Yeah. Well, what day part were you working?
Mornings.
Okay. Now, how did that affect you? How'd you do with that?
Still young, so it wasn't like, there were Thursday nights where we would go out, we would get home at 2 and sleep till about 4:30 and then do some of our best shows on Fridays. So it wasn't evident, like, nobody, the boss even then, he was a drinker. It just, nobody checked that. Like I even remember a time being intoxicated doing another station, like in the afternoon, because we went out for a liquid lunch and he was just like, "You need to go home." "Huh? Well, I still got more." "No, don't worry about it."
Yeah.
So it was just kind of baked in, and I don't know if that was because I did so many duties around there, programming multiple stations, if I was just that talented, they cared. I don't know. It was never really brought up.
Well, I'm one of those people, even still to this day. If I'm working with you, like there are a lot of people who are fall down drunks, but I don't know about a lot, but it happens, dude, that are very good at their jobs. And it's kind of like it goes back, like Northern California, that area, California, like the old school, like Al Davis, like Oakland Raiders, like, it's like, I don't care what you do. Like, just be on time, and like show up to the facility and play your ass off and whatever. And so like, a lot of times people are okay with that, like you had your skill set, like you said, you just may have been that talented, but then ultimately though, you go home with yourself, right? So you're the problem. So when do you implode, or is there a consequence or two that takes Jason to his knees.
Oh, yeah. The kid's mom and I were going through our divorce.
What year? How long ago was this?
8.5 years ago now.
Okay.
8.5, 9 years ago. I think we've been divorced almost a decade. And there was a point where I just, as much of my beautiful children, they were little then, and I just didn't want to go back there. I hated the person I was in that, and literally said, I'm going to go grab us some more beer. Of course, I said, I've only had a couple. I'll be fine. Me having a couple was like usually 6, 7, 8, something like that. You wouldn't know the difference between most people. And on the way back, I was like, I'm done. And I literally steered my car, aimed for a dead power pole, hit that pole. And the plan was I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt just before I hit that pole. Well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't reach it. And when I hit that pole, flipped the car. And I ended up walking home. So my phone and everything was thrown. It's about a quarter mile from my house. And here I am knocking on the door, and the kid's mom answers, and I'm covered head to toe in dirt, some glass in one of my feet because my right foot, because my flip flop, one of them came off, and I'm walking through this field and all this stuff. And it was in reflection, sadly, the thing I needed to start to change my ways, or at least get a seed planted up there. Do
you remember what you were thinking? Did you have thoughts of kind of going off the grid or suicidal ideations before that night? Or was it just a spur of the moment thing, like where it's like, this life is not for me. Like I want to be like a free bird or whatever.
Yeah, I would, there were times, throughout the marriage that I would just not come home. Be like, I'm going to stay with a buddy. And, I knew all the bartenders were my friends. So I had one good friend, ironically, sober now too, who was like the bartender in town. Everybody knew him. And I would just go and meet up at his bar. He'd drive me to his house. I would crash there. It was frequent occurrence of just knowing that there's something wrong and tumultuous there that was not healthy. And I definitely struggled with suicidal ideation. And that started really probably in my teenage years. So it was an ongoing thing, but that was the first and only attempt at it. Like, okay, I'm done.
Were people shocked? Because you're very easy to talk to. You're easy to connect with. You're positive. You have a good energy and aura. I don't know what you were like when you were drinking, but now you do. Were people surprised when you start to share some of this with people, some of this darkness?
Yeah. And the irony of the working at the radio station I'd say only 2 people really were like, I don't know, he might have a problem.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, I had no idea, hit it real well. But a few of the close people that I did eventually let in on that were incredibly surprised, because I would put the good smile on. I would get somewhere and be in an environment, especially at work. I would dig in, and I would stay and do long hours. And I think a lot of people really surprised because it's kind of like Adam Sandler's anger management, where he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not angry. It was like,
that's good impression.
It was all internal, It was all internal. So I think everybody was really surprised about it. I think everyone except for my mom.
She knew.
Yeah. But, she kind of, in adulthood too, was like, you're going to I'm here for you, but you have to make your choices,
They say we're the last to know as alcoholics. Were you surprised? Like, were you like that, we go back to that night where everything just kind of seems like it is falling apart. You walk back to that house with your kids in there and, your ex. Were you surprised that you were like, wow, it's gotten this bad?
No. I don't think I could comprehend it at the time. But in reflection, no. I definitely was in victim mode. It was always this person or blaming the kid's mom or stress or, I'm the sole provider, any excuse, whatever it was. It was always in victim mode. So it took me a while to really reconcile that. I'm sure, you can probably relate. There was always every other reason but me that I had this issue going on, or that I turned to this to cope. And it's just a bunch of bull that I told myself for a long time.
Yeah. When did you finally, was this when you made a move towards recovery? Or was this just one of the things, like one of the humongous like seeds that's planted? Like, okay. Cause like when I started to have major consequences, like we're talking about, I didn't necessarily get sober, but I was like, whoa, like if I don't die, like I may end up like, this isn't going to work anymore. I'm going to have to get sober at some point. Yeah. I thought that because I was fortunate enough to have some people in my life I had seen go that direction, and they had what I wanted per se from a distance. So was this one of those situations where it was kind of a check mark, or was it, hey, I got to stop?
The funny part was I had done some 12-step work prior to that. Yeah. And
sex addiction or?
No, for alcohol.
Okay.
And I did actually, now that I'm forgetting about that, I did go to a counselor. He was a Christian-based counselor who he went through sex addiction, similar childhood, went through molestation as well. And that was another component of it. And, being that it was a male, there's a lot of stuff up in the psyche that I had never dealt with. So I did do some 12-step stuff, but it was, because I'm a recovering people pleaser too, a lot of that, well, you're not as fun when you don't drink. So you can have one or two. So eventually I bought back into that. And then, you stop going to meetings and you continue on. So there were some seeds planted, but I didn't have any really great examples of anyone that had really transformed their life. Yeah. That had anything that I wanted. It was, some good people that I would go to the meetings, but there was no external camaraderie, which I think is one of the most biggest key components for building that sober community. So there wasn't really a good seed planted. My world was so small, and literally all my friendships, even after my divorce, and I went through periods of some sobriety, but not really doing anything to improve life. I just wasn't drinking. So it really took, it was about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago now. Let me do the math. Yes, 5 years ago. Another relationship that was really tumultuous, and near the end of it, being able to identify, wow, this person, maybe you can relate to this piece, Pete, this person's not good for me, and I'm not good for them, but they found me attractive with this personality that was driven by my alcoholism. Yeah. Who the hell am I? Where's it going to go? What is going to happen? And so that was the first real consciousness, big point of surrender, that it was like, I need to take this more serious than I have been. And I was already putting stuff on social media at that time before the Recovery Out Loud seemed to really be happening, or at least that I saw. Yeah. In my small bubble. And slowly people just started to go away. And it was a great gift, because then I had to deal with myself. Yeah. It's like, there's nobody to go drink with.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened to me. I mean, people just stopped hanging out with me because it was too much. I mean, that was it. And I couldn't even really swing it, hanging out like a normal person anymore. It was all about the booze, all about the drugs. And, I can really relate to that. So we got to back up a little bit. You mentioned about the sexual trauma. So you were molested as a kid by a family member who was a male.
It was actually an employee of my dad. My dad was a truck driver, and somebody that worked there very temporarily. So but yeah.
So that shit rocks you. And now you're clearly you haven't. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like, but I can't even imagine what it would be like to share about that, right? Like as a young kid, especially. So now that's still swimming around up there with all the alcoholism and everything else. So what is the last point where you come to where you're like, I've got to, where you fully surrender? Sure. Because full surrender, we can still make mistakes. We're not saints. We slip up. But like, when did you know, okay, I got this shit. I've got to do something. I'm going to go all in.
Yeah, it ironically was about a year after starting this podcast, Knockin' Doorz Down.
So you're knocking doors down, but you're still drinking. You're still knocking beers down.
No,
okay.
I wasn't. I was actually in a good period of sobriety.
Okay.
I think it was a little over a year, and then had some slip ups here and there, and then got back on track. And then when I had my last one, it was trying to maintain a friendship with someone that it was an unhealthy relationship. And when it kind of came to the head of getting that person out of my life that night, literally got in a fight with this person. Don't remember. I wasn't drinking. I was completely sober, went to the convenience store, came home, started drinking, but I didn't remember driving to the convenience store. It was a sober blackout. I was in such a state of sorrow, anger. I mean, all the bullshit emotions, every single part of it was there. And I got 3 beers in and called my now sponsor. He wasn't at the time. And I went, I don't know what happened, man. And he's like, the perfect thing just happened to you. I was like, huh? He's like, no, this is great. I'm like, what? You're effing insane, dude. What are you talking about? He's like, this is great. What happened with that person? And I'm like, I told her, like, hey, this ain't going to work. I wish you the best, but there's no more contact. Sorry, you're blocked. He's like, dude, that's huge. As you it needs validation from women. Yeah. This is huge. He's like, come on.
Those are huge fork in the road moments, I think, in our ability to be people. Go ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, we ended up staying on the phone till about 2 a.m. He's like, where's your big book? I'm like, it's beside my bed. He's like, well, you asshole, you clearly haven't been reading it. So let's go.
Yeah.
And he gave me like the hardcore 12-step boot camp, man. Pete, he took me through. I think by the time I started working with him as a sponsor all the way through the steps, I mean, it was like a month and a half. He's like, we're going to kick ass at this. He goes, I know you still have your step 4 written down. I'm like, oh yeah, I got most of it. All right, we're going to finish that thing. And we just ticked it off, and he was just on me. Still is to this day. I'll get the message, like, So
can you describe like how things went differently? How things and he mentioned that like this is a good thing because sometimes. You're a sports guy, right? So am I. And it's weird, but you talk about, and this is so different. It's almost not fair to compare the two, but like a team will, get beaten by an underdog. Let's say a college basketball team. And they're like, well, like their coach, you got their attention, and so now like, cause that is what happens to us when we're not working as hard as we can, working a program. And when, you just like, you don't know what happened, but you're there, you had a beer. And then like, so now this thing has your attention again,
Yeah.
So how did you change your approach? How did you go all in this time? Or what was different? Maybe nothing was different, dude. I don't know.
No, it definitely, it was, I mean, you use the word surrender and you're right. It's the first time that I don't know about you. I struggled with this and that. Growing up Catholic, I mean, I'm Portuguese. You got Portuguese
too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought so, maybe with the last name.
Huh?
And so it's like, I always believed in God, granted Catholic school didn't do any favors when you had questions. They went, just go say the Hail Marys and hello Dollies. It's like, what the, really?
Yeah.
This is some shit right here. I want answers,
No, there was no like talking through it.
No, 0. Yeah. Okay, so you can relate.
Oh, yeah.
But it's the first time a real surrender of that struggle that I believed in God and a higher power, but I didn't believe in one that loved or had a purpose for me. And it was the first time working with my sponsor and I don't think I've ever told him this, so I'll have to send him this clip right here. He just really, for the first time, helped me see that there was so much more purpose and he's had long-term recovery and his story's so gnarly and such a beautiful person, and to be this man that's just of service to people. He's just awesome. He's just a wonderful person. And it was that first glimpse, like you said, as someone that had something that I wanted. And granted, he's financially successful and, works in the rock music biz and everything else. But it was the first time I was like, whoa, there's something here more. And I can talk to a man about this. And that was huge for me. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I had some good male role models, but like not a peer, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was that first kind of embrace, like, you know, even to this day now, we're going to do a retreat someday and all we're going to talk about is God. Like, I'm in.
Yeah.
He's just this gnarly, awesome dude. And so for me, that was that big shift, you know? I mean, I'm curious for you when you say that too, like people had what I wanted, like what did that look like for you?
Well, I mean, I can go back to when in 2002, I was in a situation where I was brought to my knees and I started to go to meetings and I couldn't even see straight. You know, I had been abusing drugs and drinking so much around the clock that the fog didn't clear for a long time, it felt like. But I was going to meetings and all these people were happy and they seemed really authentically happy at these meetings and they were connecting with each other. You know, getting to a meeting early, it was like I was at a happy hour, you know, like these people genuinely at this Saturday morning meeting I used to go to were really glad to see each other. And there was a lot of good, you know, you'd had the occasional guy like me who was crawling in, and that was the best part for these people. Right. But I was like, wow, they have something in there that I want. I mean, and then there were certain people, again, sports podcasts like yours, podcasts like this, sports documentaries where they like whether it was Chris Mullen talking about getting sober or Dennis Eckersley talking about getting sober. I saw that these people who I thought were just iconic struggled the same way that I did. Now they were sober. They had what I wanted all over. So I had a lot of role models and I've always been ignorance is bliss, maybe like very positive. And I'm just dumb enough, right? Where I don't have too much trouble negotiating. Like I'm not on the debate squad, dude. Like you want to talk about the big book. If I'm here and everything in my life brought me to my knees up until this point, let's get down to it, right? What you have, I'm going to give it a shot. You want to talk about God? Let's go. You know, I'm going to find a way. Right now, early on, I believe that you believe, right? And then I'll find my concept. That's how I rolled. And it worked. I mean, it just like I was so broken that I finally was able to be put back together. It was pretty cool. But I wanted to ask you about your spiritual journey.
Sure.
Like, talk to me about that evolution.
Oh, goodness. Boy, I'm gonna try to hold it together. I've not had anyone ask me that. It was the first time being told, you know, I sent my sponsor this laundry list text. And it's the bitching about everything, Pete. I mean, all the shit you could think of how life was wrong financially and, you know, discourse as oftentimes happens with divorced people trying to co-parent and all this different shit. And he goes, pray. And I'm like, motherfucker, that's it? Pray? And I'm, you know, firing back. No response. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Pray. Whatever. And I did. And it's the first time I heard a voice that wasn't my own, that was very loving. And that was the point that it was, oh my God, I've been spiritually broken even as a kid that, you know, did Sunday school and all this different stuff. And at one point had memorized every little Catholic, you know, catechism thing you had to do. That there was never a presence of letting God in. And it was the first time that I felt okay. I felt just okay. And it was just like, this is all right. Like, I'm not having to put on a facade. I'm alone. My kids aren't here right now in the house. And I don't know. I wouldn't say it was bliss. I don't know that I have the word for it.
Yeah.
But there's a different kind of calm that was better than any chemical I had ever taken. Any, no offense to the beautiful women I've been involved with, and any orgasm I ever had or anything else. And that really got me more curious that whenever I hit a meeting or something and did, a sidebar on a break or afterwards, that was the conversation that I started asking anyone that brought up a sense of spirituality or God, or even I'm a person of Christian faith. If they mentioned Jesus Christ, it'd be like, oh, wait, what? Hey, this Bible thing's really confusing. I had these people that supposedly knew everything about it that would never answer any freaking questions whatsoever. And it really opened up that curiosity there. I'm still a binger at heart with things. So, I just kind of find it in different ways now. So, my partner, she's a woman of faith and always has been. And so she's just brilliant about me being able to ask questions or did I interpret this right? Or, what did you think of the sermon that we went to? And, it's really one of my favorite things to converse about now. Like, if our time is so limited here. So to me, it's really beautiful to think about being guided by something else, someone else. I don't know how to put it, to get the hell out of my own way, I guess. Yeah,
because that's the opposite of being free.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, really trying to control everything. This is my experience. That's the exact opposite of the peace it sounded like you were talking about when you're asking God for direction and not relying on yourself. Does this, you already answered this question. So I'll phrase it differently. What do you do on a daily basis? Because you brought up something that when you're working a program and that program that includes spirituality, connection with other people in recovery, right? I started to get the same juice that I got out of drinking and using. And to me, then I started to float. But again, like it was way better than being high or drunk because when because ultimately, it's life, right? We have ups and downs, but you don't go to depths anymore. You just kind of go back to sea level, Yeah. So what exactly, when we're talking about that juice, what do you do today in your life that gives you that feeling of fulfillment and freedom and esteem that enables us to finally look and say, I can't believe, because for me, it's like, I can't believe I was relying on that shit for so long for all these feelings now that I'm able to get on life's terms.
Yeah. The irony of it, right?
Right, dude.
I think it's the acceptance of, when we were using, tell me if this resonates with you, Pete, we got the reward on the front end and the suffering on the back end.
100%.
And I think it's the acceptance of some discomfort, suffering on the front end to get the reward on the back end. So be that, like I'm said, prayer and meditation can be very uncomfortable. It can be extremely uncomfortable. I don't know about you, maybe you can relate, but I judge myself a lot in it.
Yeah.
So it's pushing through that. I mean, gratitude's the first thing I think about when I wake up, before I grab the cell phone or whatever else. I try to at least think of 5 things that I'm grateful for today.
What'd you think about today?
Today was definitely my belief in God. It was that my children are healthy, that my girlfriend is healthy. We're going to get a little time away. So I'm kind of, much as I try to take every day, I'm like, oh yeah, only 3 weeks till we get to go have a little time away. But it's coupled with some work stuff. So that'll be cool. And then what was the 5th one? I'm drawing a blank. I don't recollect.
See, sometimes that's how it is. It's the same thing. Some of those gratitude moments are just as fleeting as some of those resentments, if you know what I mean. Like, I always tell the story. This is like, because I was just thinking about this. There's a guy, Ernie, who goes to a meeting I go to here, and he's very spiritual, and he's very attractive in that regard. And he has a God box, or he had one, especially when he was going through a divorce. And a God box is if you can't get something on your mind, if you have a resentment, you write it down on like an index card, right? And I would write down like, Jason is challenging me at work. I can't stand this motherfucker. God, please take this resentment from me. I'm going to pray for Jason. And then I put it in the box, right? So, and I give it to God. Like the act of, I literally give it to God. So anyways, this guy, Ernie, was moving one time and his daughter said, "What's in this box?" It's like full. And he's like, "Oh, that's my God box." And she goes, "Well, do you want to look? Do you want to like see what's in it?" And he's like, "I have no idea." Like, and that is like, that's the resentments we have, right? They're the things that put us in knots for certain days, right? That like will own me for 24 hours. I write it down. I put it in this box. I let it go. And a year from now or from then, I have no idea of all those little thoughts, right? Like my sponsor says, it's not the bears that'll drive you out of the forest. It's the mosquitoes, and all those little things that we've got to handle on a daily basis with exercises, like you were saying, the gratitude exercises and stuff like that. It really does free us,
Yeah.
And those are, give me another thing you do in your spiritual life that enables you to feel that freedom and gives you that juice.
Boy, I'm gonna use that God box. Oh,
it's a good one. I mean, all this shit is stolen from somebody else. That was from Ernie. Yeah.
Hey, that's what we do. We use this stuff and repurpose it. Lately,
I have a God box at my house where there was 2 years ago where I was in such up in the air with work stuff that I really wanted. And every day I was writing about it. And I put it in there every day. And, it all worked out. Some of it didn't actually, but then it ultimately really did. But I was working that box out, dude, and it really helped me. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I was in knots over all that stuff because it all worked out, even the things that didn't,
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure my fifth one this morning was accepting that it's God's will, not mine.
Yeah.
Which I struggle with a lot. But lately, my mentor, who I'm really proud of, he's debuting as one of the interventionists tonight on A&E's intervention.
Oh,
Mike
no
Diamond.
way.
Yeah.
Can you say his name?
Yeah. Mike Diamond.
Okay, cool. Well, look for him. Yeah.
Gnarly, awesome dude from Perth, Australia. And for whatever reason, we just really gelled. So he's gotten me into yin yoga. So it's, the really deep stretching and, he's a very Zen dude. And he's like, trust me, like your trauma, like, okay, where's your pain? Neck, shoulder, gut. And he's like, all right, you're going to do this, this, and this, and your groin and everything else. And he's like, you're going to feel that release of trauma. And he was right. Like there's been times by the end of it, I'm exhausted, but my mind is connected to something that had been troubling me. And it's like, it just starts to kind of melt away. So and I will be honest, not every day. This morning it was kind of slept in a little more than I should have. Did my 5 things, grab my coffee real quick and get my youngest out the door kind of a situation. But that's been a big part of it. And then just continuing to connect to a community. I'm a Celebrate Recovery guy now. That's kind of the strongest recovery group here, ironically at the church I go to. So hitting that a lot, talking with those guys, lots of awesome newcomers and some wisdom, but really it's that connection to community. I mean, there's not someone in recovery that I don't speak with every day.
Yes.
And, and just that check-in, like that's huge. Just that reminder, those little things, I mean, you and I from outward, it might be like, oh, it's different people. No, we're going through similar thoughts, feelings, resentments, habits, hang-ups, all the stuff that's
all
there.
of them. The people that we don't think would ever have those, they have them just as bad or worse on that day. I'm always surprised. So, and your work now, I mean, with knocking doors down, I mentioned you just feel like the perfect guy for it.
Thank you.
You do a hell of a job. Now, when you do that, but talk to me about the other parts of and aspects of your life outside of recovery that have continued to grow as you've grown.
Yeah. So in addition to doing this, I also work at an awesome nonprofit, Parents and Addicts in Need, Pain in Fresno. So we're big Narcan distributors. The founder there, Flint, whom you're going to meet.
this
and
week.
you're gonna love.
Yeah.
Beautiful guy.
Yeah.
He's a character. He does a support group for parents and family members of a suffering addict or someone new to recovery, and it's just very different than Al-Anon or Narconon, and not a knock on those. They're beautiful programs, and I know my mom did that for quite a few years. But it just works different. So it's cool to be a part of that where, we get families through. I've been there where, he's talking with the suffering addict and the family and helping them get off to find treatment. And so being a part of that, where actually using some of these skill sets to let someone know it's okay, let a family member know it's okay to say, I'm suffering, my loved one is suffering, and we just need help. It's really rewarding. I would have never expected. God really gave me that opportunity in a very weird way to, I was literally praying like, I need something additional. I know I can do more. And I had went on all these job interviews and rejection. And then
welcome to the human race, pal.
Yeah, right. Ironically, I can think of one job in the last 20 years I actually applied for that I got. And
isn't that how it works, dude? I mean, that's how, like, my next opportunity is not on my list of stuff that I'm going to do. I have goals, but like I base that on my experience in sobriety, right? Which has been a little bit like, I never know what's around the next corner. And they're always magnificent surprises. Some I bungle, some I know how to handle if I'm in the right spot. But it's pretty cool, like mystery, life is. And the way that your higher power, God, will kind of guide you through all that, right?
Yeah. Do you do a good job with that? See, I still struggle with
it. With exactly what? Oh, like on God's time?
Yeah, I still ironically, Mike and I did our one of our calls there today. I don't know why we do a Instagram live, him and I together on Mondays, and whatever reason he felt he needed to call me after it, and he knew exactly what the F I was struggling with. He knew, like, brother, I could, that great Australian accent. I can tell what the hell's going on with you. Like, I'm butchering it bad.
Yeah. I struggle with it too. I big time. Yeah. I mean, because it's, fear of losing what I have and not getting what I want. And really, I need to have conversations like I'm having with you, or get to a 12-step meeting, or have a conversation like this with somebody else every day, or I just take my will back. And sometimes taking my will back really isn't doing anything, but it's just totally cutting out God's will and his plan. Whereas I will get to a dark space where I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to do anything right now, but I have doubts, and the doubts become overwhelming. And I'm like, oh, well, I have doubts because I have no hope, and I have no like spiritual guide. So I'm reminded of, and here's the most beautiful thing about, because sometimes I'll talk to somebody who's a sponsee or somebody in recovery that's early, or somebody will share this back with me because that's how it works. But like, I have a body of work in sobriety that's, God, like, thank you. It's over a decade now, right? And it's, if I do the next right thing, right, and I rely on God's will, like, shit works out wonderfully. Even and there are downs, right? But again, you take it back to sports. It's like you're really hitting for average. Like, you're going to strike out. Like, you're going to go 0 for 4. But like, if you work a program and you stay with that spiritual torch, right, leading the way, like, you're going to be a fucking all-star. That's just how it is. Like, if somebody is in recovery and you're going to work a program, I'm going to bet all the money I have on that person, as opposed to somebody who just stopped drinking and is white knuckling, right? And then the person who's just still drinking and using, which could be us, that person I'm not even thinking about. They're screwed, because I know that experience too. So that's what I try to go back to, that my experience in sobriety, when I start to get really doubtful, because I'll tell myself, no, it's not gonna happen this time, or no. I will get black and white documents in front of me that say, this is good, this is good, this is good. But then this tells me that, no, it's bad. enough time alone and up there. So that was a long answer, but yeah, clearly I've been thinking about it. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you said the word in there that really, I think is one of my biggest is that losing what I have. And I have to, I don't know, maybe give me your insight or how you really, really process that, because I have to tell myself at the end of the day, no matter what, when I meet my creator, I'm not taking any of this shit with me.
No.
It's all rented. None of it's mine. Like, as a parent, my belief is our kids are gifted to us. And then hopefully we can guide them the best we can and help them build a solid foundation in which they can do good for the world and feel good about their life. And so I have to remember that time's rented too. My partner, this relationship is a choice, no matter what. Even in a marriage, it's like, it's choice, and the property I own or whatever it is. It's like, I struggle so much with that idea of losing what I have, even though I know better that it's all rented. Yeah.
No, that's really good stuff. I need to hear that, because I don't think that way. I think, for me, to what you were saying, like how I handle that, like I have had like some like, real like tough moments career wise and like personally in sobriety. And it's always kind of hilarious, right? Like when the worst possible scenario comes through for you and you're like, oh shit, like I didn't think this was going to happen, and I can always like laugh or be like, wow, like, God, I did not see this coming. And I just kind of roll with it, I mean, and I know the way through is just kind of staying the course. Right. And the only way through is through. I mean, so it's like, what am I going to do? And those are moments of extreme growth for me. Like when the stuff goes absolutely sideways and that quote unquote worst case scenario comes through, those are some of the best opportunities that I'm granted, because it really gives me a chance to show the type of person I am. When things just don't go the way that I wanted them to, or think I'm embarrassed, or, I'm ashamed of something. Those are opportunities for me to, okay, like this is who I am, right? Because I've got a program and an army of people and a higher power that back me and guide me too, Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hadn't really processed it that way. I mean, even hearing you speak, ironically, I'm sitting there thinking about, when we're the little kid and we're in the driveway shooting the basketball and we're like, and we're down to 2 points to the Chicago Bulls with 10 seconds. I guess some of it's kind of that way, and maybe why we love sports, right? Yeah. That ability to triumph in adverse situations.
Dude, and 100%. I've always been driven by a comeback story. And that's why it was sort of not, I don't know, maybe that's why things have worked out for me the way that they have, because I don't give up, because I was taught not to. And I love comeback stories are the best. So why not write your own? If you find yourself in the absolute like depths, then you can just surprise the shit out of everybody. Like, what do you tell the person? I'll wrap you up because we're up against the time now. When somebody comes to you and they can't stop drinking or they can't stop using, or somebody that's listening to this podcast, I used to listen to podcasts or watch a movie about recovery drunk, and I would think I'm never going to get there, sometimes crying, so how, what does that person, what would you say to that person that feels like they're never going to get it? They feel hopeless.
Yeah. You saying that watching recovery movie drunk just made me think of watching Michael Keaton's Clean and Sober.
Oh man, we watched that in rehab. Yeah.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah. I love that. It's my favorite recovery movie. Yeah. I guess the irony of the shirt I'm wearing today, which wasn't planned, and it comes down to hope. I've seen it so much, Pete. There's a young guy that we do some stuff with there at Pain Parents and Addicts in Need, Julian. And I mean, he was on death's door with fentanyl, and now he's thriving. He wants to become a English professor and he's got this wonderful girlfriend. And it's like, I've seen so many things where we think it's the ninth inning and we've got no one on base and two outs. And all of a sudden we got the bases loaded and our cleanup hitters next up to bat and they got no option but to pitch to them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, these things really do happen. And I guess the best I could encourage people is with hope, nothing is lost.
Yeah.
Like it's there. Like there's, until that moment in which, this vessel that our spirit's in returns and becomes a part of the earth, like there's always hope for anything. I mean, especially when it comes to addiction. I mean, you've seen it. I've seen it. You're an example of it, that we can and we will change. And if we're coachable. Yeah. I mean, two guys that played sports, I hear it when you talk about. You got to remain coachable, dude. He was coachable, man. Yeah. You got to be coachable. He was good because he was coachable. Yeah. That holding on to that hope. And I think faith couples with hope that you can get through this, that you can, and it's going to be a process and you're going to go through the hurts and everything else. But, in that zone, like, I love sports analogies. Seems appropriate with you because we can talk this way. Like, yeah, Michael Jordan was great, but the guy never lost hope and he kept fighting to the very end. Like, you were going to have to literally just about drag him out of there to prevent him from doing everything he could to want to win. And you get that opportunity, and it's like, it's that same as being that kid in the driveway telling yourself you're down by 2, you got to make the 3-point shot with 10 seconds left to go. It's because you're waiting for that moment to be great. And it is in your control. Yeah. Like, you do have more control than you think.
Yeah, that's the only thing you do control, really, is how hard you work at this. How hard do you keep coming back? Like, if you relapse, are you getting back on the horse? Like that's the only thing you really control, that effort and your attitude towards it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome job, Jason. That was really good, man. I anything else you want to leave us with? Where can people find you? All that good stuff.
Oh, sure. The podcast, Knockin Doorz Down with the Z, at Knockin Doorz Down on all social media platforms. You want to find out more about Parents and Addicts in Need, just search PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, nonprofit, doing great work. We're going to be expanding services into some other areas of California. That's all I can think of, just other than, man, this is cool. It's nice to make a new friend in recovery. It's one of the things I just love about being sober and the gifts that come along. So thanks, Pete.
Yeah, you got it. You got one. I mean, I needed this convo today too. Like, selfishly, that's one thing about, not every time, but a time like this where I feel a lot better after a conversation on this podcast. So I appreciate it, dude.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah. Here's the things that God would present to me if I just get out of my own way, right?
Tell me about it. Yeah. All right, brother. Thank you so much, Jace.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.
Hey there, golf lovers. Looking to step up your game? Let me tell you about Mollybox, the ultimate golf subscription box. Every month, Mollybox sends you a box packed with premium golf gear, accessories, and stylish apparel, all delivered right to your door. Imagine getting top-tier apparel and more, all handpicked just for you. With Mollybox, you'll stay ahead of the game and boost your performance. It's like having a personal caddy in a box. So why wait? Join the Mollybox family today. Head over to mollybox.com and use your limited time promo code ROGUE25, ROGUE, ROGUE 25 for 25% off your first box. That's mollybox.com.